What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we get to talk about Scream 7 moving forward and some very exciting things, I think, kind of happening behind the scenes. So let's kind of get into it. Number one, we have the writer's strike fiasco that, thank the Lord above, is finally over. Now, the thing is that people, I think, are jumping very, very quickly, and I get it. Trust me, I want Scream 7 just as much as everybody else, like tomorrow, if we could possibly get that, right? But obviously, the acting strike or the actors strike is not yet over. So although there's rumors and all this stuff of filming moved up and all that, I'm not putting too much stock into it literally at all. And maybe honestly, primarily, number one, half of the strike is still not technically over. Now, I do think it's going to end really, really quickly. I think they're meeting on Monday. I could see it being just like the writer's strike where they meet like 3, 4, 5 days in a row, and then they kind of hammer it out. So maybe first, second week of October, like within the next few weeks, honestly, I think the acting strike is going to be over. So they'll lift it, they'll be able to film again, and things will start, moving forward. Now, when does that mean Scream 7 is going to film? Obviously there was the rumor, Beyond the Mask talked about it, right, that like it could still happen this year. Obviously it's been posted on social media and all that stuff. And again, I'm not in huge support of it, mainly just because I feel like, we've talked about Jenna Ortega a lot. There's talk of like, well, obviously there's only like 1 day left of filming on Beetlejuice 2 left. So Jenna's schedule may be slightly open. You do have Wednesday season 2, but that seemingly has been pushed. So does Scream go first? Does she film Scream, then she films Wednesday season 2, which normally I think we would have expected it to be the other way around. But there is also Melissa, who is not yet done with that monster movie, right? Like she has to still do that. So you definitely can't do Scream 7 without her, at least I imagine. So what, you have to give her maybe a month or two. So could it still happen like in December or so? Yeah, it could. Am I putting the odds very high on that? No, I am not. So that's just kind of where I think about that situation. Moving on to the second part of it, which is still touching upon the writer's strike. So again, thank God it's all over. And with that, we're now starting to see a few other things. So we saw the picture today of a very, very interesting meeting between Chris Landon, obviously Matt and Tyler, and then also a fourth individual who I do believe is going to be that fourth writer on the film. I don't think that's all that original. You've probably heard other creators say that, but I do believe Michael Kennedy is going to be the fourth person. Now, what I do want to do right now, like in this video, is kind of talk about, is that a good idea? Is 4 people? Because where I stand on things, I do think 4 people is a bit much. Now, you could say, because I think there's like splintered kind of parts to this, do people want Chris Landon writing the movie? Yes, I think they absolutely do. Okay, so that's kind of locked in. Do people want Guy and Jamie writing the movie? I think it's actually very, very split. So there's part of me where it's like, well, look, it's their movies, like Scream 5, Scream 6, and what will be Scream 7. They wrote Scream 5, they wrote Scream 6, and I would imagine, and this is why I think I'm okay with this entire situation, largely Scream 7, I think, is going to be theirs. Now, that might not be the most positive. I know there's a lot of people that don't like the writing in the last 2 movies. That's totally fine. You could go on hours and hours of debates on that, but regardless, they did start it. You would think they're going to end it. I very much assume they are going to end it. And so what's Chris and Michael doing? Well, I believe that they've been brought in to kind of just make sure everything looks good. I think Chris Landon, being the director, and what he talked about with, Steven of Craven Something Scary, he's made it very apparent, right? Like, he wants his DNA on a script that he directs. If he's directing it, he needs to have a little, at least, and I actually think it's a lot more than that, a little bit of input into the script. So what I think probably happened is Guy and Jamie already had a pretty workable script for Scream 7, probably around the time that Scream 6 released. They brought on Chris Landon to direct. He got to read the script. He got to kind of add maybe his layer to it, revise, edit just a tad. And obviously, we don't know the internal writing room, but this is kind of what I think. And then for some reason, now Michael Kennedy, look, I've never seen Freaky. I don't think I've actually ever seen anything that Michael Kennedy has written. That's fine. I don't have any hate towards the guy. I don't have any love towards the guy. I've been told by other people he's a pretty good writer. So fine, cool. And also I have been told he's a die-hard Sydney fan who just cares about that character to death and also just cares about Scream to death. So I guess if you're having a professional writer in Hollywood mixed with a Scream diehard that like knows the lore, knows the characters, knows the complexities of it all. If you're having him even simply read it and say, okay, well, I would maybe add this, I would take this out, I would, change this, even if that's his only job, which honestly it could be, because you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. I know there's, the memes and the sayings out, and I think even Chris Landon had like tweeted that like there's a lot of cooks right now doing stuff. Look, I like that. That's fine. But you don't want to have too many, because ultimately, look, again, I understand the divisiveness of Guy and Jamie. I'm serious. I do. However, the more people I think you add, I think the messier a script, I flat out. I don't actually think that's all that controversial. You think about writing literally anything, and then you add more and more people on top of it that are supposed to kind of help and do it with you. Like, it's just going to get, I think, a little out of control. But again, how I think this one is working, that I kind of would understand, you got the main script, and then you kind of got the director's fingerprints on it, because he wants that. He kind of has to do that. And then maybe you just have somebody in Michael that's kind of just looking over everything, making sure all of it seems good. Obviously, the connections, he's not just like some random stranger they brought on, right? I think the connections to Chris Landon make the most sense. And by the way, this also has set people off again with the idea that, well, maybe you could bring like a Jessica Roth in. Obviously, the connection there with Happy Death Day, or Freaky with Catherine Newton. Like, I like those ideas. I like it a lot. The idea of it maybe being like the stab thing, they don't look too much like the Carpenter sisters. I don't know if that would actually work, but being like, I think people have tied it into Kirby. I've seen that on Twitter, where maybe they can be like a younger or older sister of Kirby. That'd kind of be interesting, I suppose. Like, they don't have to play huge roles into it. Honestly, I think it just makes sense because of the director and connections there. We already know like Matt and Tyler with Samara Weaving, and the whole lore there with her originally going to be Sam and all that jazz, right? So I wouldn't be shocked if Jessica Roth, and she's a great actress, so I'd like to see her in it. But, if she's a big part, small part, doesn't really matter. Ultimately, make the script good, and hopefully, again, I think it can get rather messy the more people you throw at it. But at the same time, man, you got more eyes than ever before, right, to look over that thing, and there's almost no excuse anymore, is there, where you have all these people looking at it, staring, reading it, and if there's any problems, any glaring issues, you'd think one of the four, especially the two newbies being brought in, whether it's Chris or Michael, you'd think that maybe they would be able to spot something. If something seems kind of off, right, they'd be able to spot it. So it's exciting. Things, I think, are moving quickly. Once the acting strike is over, we will definitely, we'll get something. We'll start to move, I think, a whole lot faster. And I think the latest this thing is filming is, the original rumor of maybe that like January, February, March period, right, that kind of late winter, early spring. I think that still makes the most sense if they want to fast track it. But then there's all the other stuff with like Smile 2, I believe, right, coming out in October. That seems like a pretty good spot for Scream. Obviously, you're not going to do it now, right? So because you have it, I think that makes it where I think Scream 7, December of 2024 is probably the earliest thing that makes sense now, which is, it's still in 2024. It would only be, look at your calendar. I'm looking at my computer screen here, but slightly more than a year away. Not all that bad, if that's the case. And if not, maybe January, February 2025, not too far. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.